The call from the void. The human patrol fleet Thunder Squadron drifted through the contested regions of the spiral arm, like predators stalking through tall grass. 3 destroyers and 1 heavy cruiser made up this small but deadly formation, each vessel scarred from dozens of battles that would have destroyed ships from softer worlds. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the lead destroyer, the UHS Wolverine. Her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she watched the stars drift by on the main view screen. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for only 12 years, but those years had taught the other species a harsh truth. Humans came from a world that tried to kill them every single day. They called Earth a death world now, a planet where the gravity could crush most aliens, where the weather could shift from peaceful to deadly in minutes, and where even the smallest creatures carried enough venom to kill. This evolutionary pressure had created a species that the galaxy both needed and feared. The communications officer, Lieutenant Marcus Torres, suddenly straightened in his chair. His fingers danced across his console with practiced efficiency. "Commander, we're picking up something unusual. It's a distress signal, but the frequency and encoding are unlike anything in our database. The signal appeared to be coming from deep within the neutral zone, a region of space that no government claimed but pirates and slavers often used as hunting grounds." Chen moved to stand behind Torres, studying the data streaming across his screen. The signal was weak, degraded by distance and interference, but there was something desperate about its pattern. It repeated every 30 seconds without variation, as if someone had set it to broadcast and then abandoned the transmitter, or died trying to maintain it. "Play it through the speakers," she ordered. The bridge filled with an eerie sound that made everyone pause. It was musical yet mournful, like 1,000 voices crying out in harmony. The universal translator struggled for several seconds before finally rendering the message into something humans could understand. "This is the last free ship of the Velani people. Our homeworld burns. Our colonies are ash. The Korvax Empire has declared our extinction. We have children aboard. We have wounded. Anyone who hears this, we beg for sanctuary. We have nowhere else to run. Please, please help us." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant throb of engines. Chen felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had heard messages like this before, during humanity's darkest wars, the voice of people who had lost everything except hope, and were about to lose that too. "How old is this signal?" she asked quietly. Torres ran calculations on his screen. "Based on signal degradation and stellar drift, approximately 6 hours old. The source is 2 light years from our position. We could reach them in 8 hours at maximum burn. But Commander, that would put us deep in the neutral zone. If the Korvax Empire is operating there, we would be severely outnumbered." The Korvax were known throughout the galaxy as conquerors who believed in the absolute supremacy of their species. They had subjugated dozens of worlds and destroyed any who resisted. Chen turned to face her bridge crew. Each face showed the same conflict she felt. Duty to their own safety warred with something deeper, something fundamentally human. They all knew what protocols demanded. "Report the signal to Earth Command. Wait for authorization, let the diplomats handle it. By the time all that happened, whoever sent that signal would be dead or worse." She opened a channel to the other ships in Thunder Squadron. "This is Commander Chen. All captains, conference room, 5 minutes." The channel closed with a soft beep. Chen looked at her crew one more time. "Begin calculating jump coordinates to the signal source. If we do this, we do it right." The meeting was brief and heated. Captain Rodriguez of the destroyer Mongoose wanted to charge in immediately. Captain Nakamura of the destroyer Taipan urged caution. Captain Mitchell of the heavy cruiser Grizzly remained silent, studying the tactical projections. Chen let them argue for exactly 3 minutes before raising her hand for silence. "We all heard that message. We all know what it means. The Korvax are committing genocide. Again. The Galactic Council will condemn it, pass resolutions, and do absolutely nothing while another species dies. That's how they operate. But that's not how we operate. Humans had learned through bitter experience that sometimes violence was the only answer to violence. Earth's history was written in blood, but it was also written in stories of ordinary people standing up to tyranny." Mitchell finally spoke, his deep voice carrying the weight of 15 years in the Navy. "Sarah, if we do this, we're not just helping refugees. We're declaring war on the Korvax Empire. They have hundreds of ships. We have 4. His pragmatism was harsh but necessary. They needed to understand what they were choosing. Chen nodded slowly. "You're right, Robert. The odds are terrible. We'll probably die, but those people, those children, they'll definitely die if we do nothing. I'm not ordering anyone to follow me. This has to be unanimous. The vote took less than 30 seconds. All 4 captains raised their hands. Rodriguez grinned without humor. My crew would mutiny if I said we were abandoning refugees. Nakamura added quietly, we're humans. We don't leave people behind, even if they're not our people. The fleet jumped into hyperspace an hour later, after sending a coded message to Earth Command explaining their actions. They didn't wait for a response. By the time it arrived, they would either be victorious or dead. The journey through hyperspace gave them time to prepare. Weapons were checked and rechecked. Marines suited up in power armor that could operate in any environment. Medical bays prepared for casualties, both human and alien. Engineers pushed the reactors to their limits, squeezing every bit of power from the fusion cores. When Thunder Squadron dropped out of hyperspace at the signal source, they found a massacre in progress. The Veilani ship was massive, a converted cargo hauler that had been modified with makeshift armor and weapons that looked more ceremonial than functional. It was surrounded by 6 Korvax warships, each one sleek and predatory. The Korvax were toying with their prey, taking shots that disabled systems without destroying the ship. They wanted prisoners, not corpses. The Veilani were a graceful species, tall and willowy with iridescent skin that changed color with their emotions. Chen had read about them in xenobiology reports. They were artists and philosophers completely unprepared for the brutality of the Korvax. Open a channel to the Korvax fleet, Chen ordered. The main screen filled with the image of a Korvax commander. The species looked like armored reptiles with scales that could deflect small arms fire and teeth designed for tearing flesh. This one's scales were decorated with trophies from conquered species. His expression showed amusement at the arrival of human ships. The famous Deathworlders arrive. Have you come to watch the cleansing? The Veilani are genetic waste, too weak to deserve existence. Soon the galaxy will be pure. Chen stood from her command chair, her expression carved from stone. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Human Navy. You will cease fire immediately and withdraw from the system. The Veilani refugees are under our protection. The Korvax commander laughed, a sound like breaking glass. 4 ships against 6? You humans may be tough for mammals, but you're still just prey that learn to use tools. Leave now and we might let you live. Chen smiled then, and everyone on her bridge recognized that expression. It was the smile of a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have ended other civilizations. It was the smile of a predator that had climbed to the top of its food chain through intelligence and sheer bloody-minded determination. You're right about one thing. We did learn to use tools. Let me show you how well. She cut the channel and turned to her tactical officer. All ships attack pattern Omega. Target their engines first. I want them alive to regret this. The human ships moved with a coordination that surprised the Korvax. They had expected the humans to form a defensive line or perhaps attempt negotiations. Instead, Thunder Squadron scattered in 4 directions, each ship beginning a seemingly random series of maneuvers. The Korvax weapons officers tried to track them, but human ships moved like their creators fought, unpredictable and utterly committed to victory. The first salvo came from the Grizzly. Kinetic rounds accelerated to 20% of light speed slammed into the nearest Korvax cruiser. The aliens had shields, but they were designed for energy weapons. The pure kinetic force of human railguns was something they hadn't prepared for. The Wolverine launched a spread of missiles that seemed to go wild, spiraling away from their targets. The Korvax ignored them, focusing on the more immediate threat of the charging destroyers. They didn't notice the missiles loop back, their simple AI brains following predetermined patterns that human tacticians had developed through thousands of years of warfare. When those missiles struck from behind, they hit unshielded engine sections. 2 Korvax ships lost propulsion immediately. When Deathworlders go to war, the battle transformed from organized engagement to chaotic melee within minutes. This was exactly what the humans wanted. The Korvax fought like most advanced species, relying on superior technology and coordinated fleet tactics. Humans fought like they were back in the caves, using every dirty trick evolution had taught them. The destroyer Mongoose accelerated directly at a Korvax battleship 3 times its size, a move that defied all conventional naval wisdom. The Korvax captain, certain the humans had gone insane, ordered all weapons to focus on the approaching destroyer. Plasma beams and particle cannons lit up space, creating a deadly corridor that nothing should survive. But the Mongoose's captain, Rodriguez, had learned his tactics in the asteroid fields of Sol system. His ship danced through the fire, using debris from earlier impacts as impromptu shields. When the Mongoose reached point-blank range, it didn't fire weapons. Instead, it deployed something the Korvax had never seen in space combat. Boarding pods. 12 pods launched simultaneously, each one containing a squad of human marines in power armor. The Korvax had never experienced boarding actions because most species couldn't survive the transition between ships during combat. Humans, raised on a world where they had to be ready for anything, had turned it into an art form. The pods punched through the battleship's hull like needles through fabric. Marines poured out, their armor protecting them from vacuum and radiation. They moved through the Korvax ship with practiced efficiency, targeting critical systems. The Korvax crew, despite their natural armor and strength, were not prepared for close combat with humans. Evolution on a death world had given humanity advantages that went beyond simple toughness. Humans could operate effectively in almost any environment, their bodies adapting to extremes that would kill other species. They could function on minimal sleep, survive on almost any food source, and most terrifyingly, they could keep fighting even when severely wounded. Marine Sergeant Williams took 3 plasma shots to her armor's chest plate and kept advancing. Corporal Davis lost his left arm to a Korvax blade and switched his rifle to his right without missing a beat. Back in space, the battle had attracted attention. Ships began dropping out of hyperspace, but not Korvax reinforcements. The newcomers were from a dozen different species, all victims of Korvax aggression. They had been hiding in the neutral zone, refugees and resistance fighters who lacked the strength to fight back. Watching 4 human ships tear into a superior force with such devastating effectiveness gave them something they had lost: hope. A Thraxian frigate, its hull scarred from running battles, moved to support the Taipan. Quelari fighters, small and nimble, began harassing Korvax weapon systems. Even a damaged Vorthon science vessel joined the fight, using its advanced sensors to provide targeting data to the human ships. The tide of battle shifted decisively when the Grizzly demonstrated why humans had earned their fearsome reputation. Captain Mitchell had been holding back the cruiser's main weapon, waiting for the perfect moment. When 3 Korvax ships lined up to concentrate fire on the wounded Velani refugee ship, he gave the order. The Grizzly's spinal mount cannon, a weapon that ran nearly the entire length of the ship, discharged with enough force to actually push the massive cruiser backward. The tungsten rod it fired was the size of a building, accelerated to speeds that turned it into something more like a force of nature than a projectile. It passed through all 3 Korvax ships without slowing down significantly, leaving massive holes that vented atmosphere, bodies, and debris into the cold void. The psychological impact was even greater than the physical damage. The Korvax had never faced weapons designed by a species that had turned warfare into science. Every other spacefaring race had developed beyond crude kinetic weapons. Humans had simply asked themselves what would happen if they made them bigger and faster. The answer was devastation. The remaining Korvax ships tried to retreat, but the coalition of species that had joined the battle wouldn't let them escape. Years of oppression and fear transformed into rage. The gentle Velani themselves opened fire with their ceremonial weapons, which turned out to be surprisingly effective when powered by desperation. The battle became a rout. The Korvax commander's ship, crippled by human boarding teams and pounded by coalition fire, sent out a desperate message to his empire. But Chen had one more surprise. The humans had been jamming communication since the battle started, using electronic warfare techniques developed during Earth's digital age. When the jamming lifted, the commander was able to send a single message before his ship exploded. "The Deathworlders have united the prey against us." His final words would echo through Korvax society for generations. The immediate aftermath was chaos. The Velani refugee ship contained over 3,000 survivors, many of them children. Human medical teams worked alongside doctors from other species, treating injuries that ranged from plasma burns to psychological trauma. The coalition ships began sharing supplies and repairs. In that moment, something unprecedented happened. Species that had hidden from each other in fear began to communicate, brought together by the humans' willingness to fight for strangers. Commander Chen stood in the Wolverine's medical bay, watching human medics treating a Velani child. The little being's skin flickered through a rainbow of colors, apparently their species' response to pain. A human nurse held the child's delicate hand in her own scarred one, singing softly in a language the universal translator didn't recognize. It didn't need to. Comfort sounded the same in any tongue. Captain Mitchell found her there an hour later. Earth Command has responded to our message, he said quietly. They're sending the entire Third Fleet. Apparently we've started something. Chen nodded, exhaustion finally showing on her face. The Korvax would retaliate. This battle was just the beginning of a larger war. But looking around the medical bay, seeing former enemies working together to save lives, she knew they had made the right choice. The Velani elder, his iridescent skin now showing patterns of deep gratitude, approached them. His voice was soft but carried clearly. Why did you risk everything for us? You don't know us. We have nothing to offer you. We're not your people. Chen looked at him, then at the scene around them. Humans treating aliens, aliens helping aliens, former prey becoming protectors. She smiled, remembering something her grandmother had told her years ago. On Earth, we have a saying. Today you, tomorrow me. We help because one day we might need help. We fight for others because someone should. We stand up to bullies because that's what makes us human. The elder's skin shifted to patterns the humans would later learn meant profound respect. Your species is young to the stars, but you carry wisdom earned through hardship. The galaxy called you Deathworlders as an insult. They meant you came from a world of death, but I think they misunderstood. You didn't come from death. You conquered it. And now you teach us to do the same. News of the battle spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions, debating whether to condemn or support the human action. The Korvax Empire mobilized its vast fleet, preparing for total war, but something had fundamentally changed. Species that had cowered for generations began to resist. They had seen 4 human ships face impossible odds for strangers. If the Deathworlders could do that, perhaps anyone could. Trading stations became recruiting centers. Former refugees joined defense forces. Scientists shared weapon technologies. The fearful became the furious. The galaxy had learned what Earth had known for millennia. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully was to punch them in the face. Within 6 months, the Korvax Empire faced rebellions on 17 conquered worlds. Their fleet, spread thin trying to maintain control, couldn't respond effectively to coordinated strikes. The human Third Fleet, when it arrived, didn't come as conquerors but as teachers. They shared tactical knowledge, trained resistance fighters, and most importantly, showed the galaxy that courage was contagious. The war would continue for 3 more years. The Korvax, despite their military might, couldn't defeat an enemy that refused to give up. Humans had a word for this kind of fighting. They called it guerrilla warfare, named after small Earth primates that were surprisingly dangerous when cornered. The galaxy learned to appreciate the irony. The final battle came at the Korvax homeworld. Their empire had shrunk to a single system, defended by everything they had left. The coalition fleet that assembled to face them included ships from 43 species. At its head was Thunder Squadron, battle-scarred but unbroken. Commander Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood on the bridge of her new flagship looking at the tactical display. Beside her stood representatives from a dozen species, including the Velani elder, who had become a close advisor. The Korvax had one last message for the coalition. They offered conditional surrender, keeping their homeworld and accepting restrictions. The coalition representatives looked to Chen. The human woman who had started this war would help decide how it ended. She thought about all the graves they had filled, all the worlds burned, all the species enslaved or destroyed. Then she thought about what made humans different from the Korvax. It wasn't their strength or their weapons or their willingness to fight. It was their ability to choose mercy when they held all the power. Unconditional surrender, she said firmly. Full disarmament. Reparations to all affected species. Your military academies will be converted to schools. Your weapons factories will make farming equipment. You'll learn to build instead of destroy. But your species will survive, and your children will grow up in a galaxy where strength isn't measured by who you can conquer, but by who you're willing to protect. The Korvax, faced with annihilation or humiliation, chose to survive. The surrender ceremony took place on the Velani refugee ship where it all began. The symbolism was intentional. The ship that had cried for help became the birthplace of a new galactic order. The Galactic Council was reformed with new laws and new enforcement mechanisms. The coalition became a permanent defense force with humans providing training and tactical doctrine. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson humanity could teach. Being from a death world didn't make humans value life less, it made them value it more. They knew how fragile life was, how easily it could be lost, and how fiercely it should be protected. Admiral Chen retired after the war, returning to Earth to teach at the Naval Academy. Her final lecture to each class always ended the same way. We're called Deathworlders because we come from a planet that tries to kill us, but we survived. We thrived. And when we heard someone cry for help in the dark, we answered. Not because we're the strongest, but because we remember being weak. Not because we're fearless, but because we choose to be brave. The galaxy thought our world made us monsters. They were wrong. It made us protectors.